Hey guys, Samia here, wedding and portrait photographer, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how much you should be charging for your wedding photography. There are different pricing brackets, I believe, in the wedding photography industry. I'm going to talk about what kind of comes with each one, as well as my experience personally at each stage. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is download my free guide below. It's a free guide to determine what you should be charging for your wedding photography, and also there's a template in there to help you lay out your prices the right way. There is actually no exact right or wrong to photography pricing and wedding photography pricing. I'm just giving you my experience. I am based in the Virginia, DC, Maryland area, so in America. So your pricing might be similar in structure from price to price, but the actual prices might be different. So I just wanted to disclose that this is applicable to kind of my area, and I think it's somewhat the same for most of the US, but if you're not in America, it might be a little bit different. For purposes of simplicity, I've kind of organized this into 5 stages of 5 brackets of pricing for wedding photographers. So for the first stage, what you'll see when you download the guide is that I'm calling it the amateur or beginner photographer. So at that stage, you'd be charging $0 to $75 an hour, and then for an 8-hour wedding day, I'm looking at the pricing guide with you. It should be between $0 and $600 for the day. So these are people that, like myself, are first starting. You're learning how to shoot manually. You're learning how a wedding day works, how to pose couples, how photo timeline works. You likely might be second shooting a lot during this stage and just kind of learning the fundamentals of what all goes into photography before you even learn how to do those things, just kind of getting introduced to the industry in the beginning. So I was in this stage for a year or so. I just spent time second shooting, being an assistant for weddings, just kind of learning the ins and outs. And then from there, I went to what I'm calling level 2, which is an entry-level photographer. And you're charging between $75 and $275 for an hour of wedding day coverage. So like you're just getting your foot into the door in this industry. It's kind of almost impossible to stay at this rate and be a full-time photographer unless you're shooting like 100 weddings a year, but because of date popularity and Saturdays, that doesn't really happen. So you might not be full-time yet, but you're kind of striving to be full-time, and this is like I believe if you're charging in this range and you're marketing and being successful in this range, this is the stage of photography pricing for me that was the hardest, because you learn the most in this stage. It's like the most vulnerable time as a photographer, I feel like, to be in, because there are so many things you're being introduced to, and you're probably still second shooting, and couples who are paying this have different kinds of expectations. So you're not necessarily having like a specific niche or audience yet. A niche of people getting married. You might just be across the board working with a little bit of a lower budget than the average wedding photography booking. So it kind of can be unclear. It can kind of be messy in this stage. So I spent a while in this stage, about 1.5 years, before I started charging over $2,200. And I think I was like 16 or 17 at the time. So it is a messy stage. It's a time where you're learning a lot. Here are the things I think you need to really focus on. The first is that you need to have knowledge of a wedding day timeline, or even being involved a little bit in making a timeline. Know how to pose couples, basic flash knowledge. I don't think you necessarily need to nail syncing flashes, but basic flash knowledge. And also, what's really important to make yourself look more professional in this stage is to start getting into systems for your business, like HoneyBook. So HoneyBook is a client management software. I have a whole playlist here on HoneyBook, so I won't bore you with that, but you can get a 50% off discount code below, and it's going to be a more official way for you to send contracts and accept payments. So when I was in that pricing stage is when I learned how to use HoneyBook. And then also Pixie Set. So you're gonna want something a little bit more professional than if you're using Google Drive or just a flash drive to actually send your clients their digital photos. Level 3 in this guide is an intermediate photographer, and this is someone who is charging between, I'm looking at my computer, $275 to $480 an hour. So your day rate would be $2,200 to $3,850. So this level, you should know how a timeline works, be involved in the timeline process, have a kind of a client experience set up. So in other words, you're not just showing up to a wedding and shooting. You should have something in place, either a welcome guide for your couples or a client gift, or like something to elevate the experience, because you are starting to get into a full-on business experience. And when you are charging more than $2,200, you're getting into a clientele that maybe has a little bit more expectations than anyone who was paying you less than that. So for me, it was helpful to get a workflow system set up in HoneyBook, so not just using the software, but actually having things that I'm sending to people, as well as Pixie Set. You also need a consistent editing style, and then I feel like there's another break in this $2,000, $3,000 mark. If you are shooting weddings and charging this much, I feel like you need a second camera to be charging more than $3,000. So that's just kind of been my experience. I also want to mention that I feel like this third stage of wedding photography is the stage with the most growth, because when you are approaching $4,000 mark, I'll explain that next stage in a second, but you are in a much different place than you may have been when you were entering this bracket of pricing. So I spent years in this bracket of pricing, and I'm just now kind of leaving the $3,850 mark. I'm kind of in the next tier up, but I feel like I learned the most in that stage, and it is a hard stage to be in, and I would just spend a lot more time than you may have in the other stages until you feel like you can increase your prices again. Number 4 is what I'm considering a professional photographer, and this is what I feel like the main difference between charging, at least in this area, less than $3,800 and charging more than that for a wedding is what you're really getting into is the world of wedding planners. So for me, and understanding this industry, is that anyone who's going to be paying upwards $4,000 or $5,000 with that kind of wedding budget dedicated to photography, it's reflective of a wedding budget that also has a wedding planner. So what that means for us as photographers is that this couple likely is paying a wedding planner to help them lock in their vendors, and so that planner is the one recommending photographers. So that makes it harder for people, photographers like us, to find clients wanting to pay more than $4,000 or at $4,000 for photography, and us not them knowing about us without us being referred by a planner. So that's why when you try to raise your prices upwards $4,000 and you might not have much success, it's because this is where you really need to get into planner connections, business connections, and other connections, because the reality of this clientele is that they are paying a planner to tell them what to do. So then the question becomes, okay, how do I do that? How do I get planners? How do I be successful in this pricing bracket? Well, I think it comes down to first understanding what a planner is looking for, and what I have understood is that a lot of it is branding. So it goes beyond color, logos, and websites and things like that, but what you are known for, what you're guaranteeing this couple as an experience. Also credentials and publishings might be important. So what you are now moving into is the world of networking, and it's an entirely different structure of marketing than you might have been before. So I'm in that place right now where I am learning this kind of stage of $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 wedding budgets for photography. So I'm still, I make these videos as I learn it, but I do understand that you are now in a different ball game, and the expectations are much higher. So always second shooter, always 2 cameras, always 2, 3, 4 flashes. It's a different level of skill set, delivery, and expectations. And I explain all this in the guide that you can download. But yeah, it's just different. It's a new stage. $5,000. So this goes from $5,000 to people are charging $20,000 to photograph weddings. So you are getting into the experienced professional, what I'm calling it, / a luxury photographer. So I think this is a special market. I would really say upwards $7,000 is kind of a luxury clientele that you are getting into. So that comes with making sure that that is what you want to shoot, if that makes sense. So I have a lot of photography friends who are very successful in this industry, and they want to shoot more intimate, smaller weddings. They don't want to go that far into big, luxury weddings. So this kind of gets into a different market so much that you may not like that or you may love it. So either way, to be able to charge that much at that rate, it's almost impossible for you to book that without a wedding planner, again, in my experience. So you need to be appealing to wedding planners, but it's even more specific, not just wedding planners, but luxury wedding planners, and wedding planners that are going to be impressed by you and your luxury experience. And you need to be able to explain that to planners and get their referral in order to book weddings at that price. Luxury or experienced professionals that have just been in the industry for so long and they're just so established, these people that are charging this much are often in the education space, so they often sell courses and have another stream of income nowadays. So just kind of give you the idea of what this looks like in the real life. They're often speakers, holding conferences, things like that, because they've already done all there is to do in the wedding industry space, and now they teach. So it's not uncommon for that to be the case. Also, just want to mention about this pricing thing too real quick is that just because you have a skill set that I mentioned that you should be going forward, it all again comes down to your confidence and your ability to sell your wedding collection. So I have another video here on YouTube that I'll link down below about how to handle rejection as a photographer, because when you go to raise your prices, it might be something that you experience, and in order to protect your business and the success of your business, you need to be handling rejection the right way. It's also possible that you have a skill set that I mentioned that's in a pricing bracket higher than what you are charging. It doesn't necessarily mean that you should just increase your prices. All I'm saying is that this is kind of the theme of skill sets that I have seen in the industry, because when I was younger, I wish somebody had explained a little bit of like what in the world was going on with photographers who are charging $1,000, $2,000, $10,000. Like what, a little bit, like give you a little bit of an idea, a visual of what the differences are. So yeah, that's just kind of what I wanted to paint a picture of for you today. So I hope you liked the video. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, because I come out with 2 new videos every single week, and I'll link those 2 videos here as well.